Continuing our study of esoteric leadership, we reach the fourth strand of energy. Every situation has got 7 strands. We've studied the previous 3. And now we're looking at the word goodbye in the 7-word system, whose keywords are realization, decision, completion, and freedom. In order to reach the profound level of realization we need to do the job, we need to make an assessment of various factors. Basically, this 4th line of inquiry into leadership is to do with management itself. Getting the job done, making decisions, knowing what to do, knowing where we're going. Management is rather a lot to do with making an assessment about the facts of the matter, opinions, trends, and where things are right now, here and now assessments, and getting a sense of where that's going in order for us to make any corrective decisions necessary. The leader is expected to be the one who makes the final decision. Maybe not all of the decisions, maybe not many of the decisions, but when there's a crunch matter, then the leader is the one that engineers the decision or makes it. And typically we talking about making it. So how do you make your decisions? And the answer is you come to a realization. In a very healthy master of the craft, there will be no gap in time between making the realization assessment and making a decision. As soon as you've got enough realization, then you make a decision. So this realization is not only a mental construct. Here are the facts. Here are various opinions, reports. We've done a lot of research to find out what other people think. We've consulted within our own team. And we've remembered, we've consulted our own experience. We could get a sense that that kind of thing leads to this inevitable outcome. There are 2 aspects of the future, and only 2. And a lot of confusion exists about what they are. The future contains what must be and what may be. The first can absolutely be predicted with absolute confidence. Second, you can predict it, but you're not sure. It's not known. Now, it's very helpful for astrologers to learn something about this. In astrology, you have the certainty that transits will end. And if something began at the timing of a transit, there's a very good chance it's going to end when the transit ends. There may be a period of assimilation and so on. There's a structure to it, a pattern to the process of a transit. Slow moving transit comes at you very slowly, gets more and more intense, leads to some situation which you don't want typically, and then you get used to it and you find in the end that it's a benefit to you. That story is almost universal. I would say you can predict that that will happen. That's what must happen. And how do I know it must happen? Well, the answer is because it always does. It always has. Therefore, it always will. You can't say that during a Pluto transit someone would die. During a Neptune transit you'll meet a drug addict. You can't predict those kind of things. That may happen. But if you want to predict that, it's not using astrology, it's using psychic ability. Some people can do that. Astrologers generally cannot. And yet they pretend that they can. So you get a huge amount of strange understandings about what astrology is. Now you apply that to management and you get the same kind of thing. A good manager will say, look, here are the facts. It really does look as though there's a trend in that direction. Certain things must be true. First of all, everything that did work, sooner or later, will not work anymore. Now, it might change soon, and it might change late, but it will change. The best way of doing something is always temporary. Any manager that forgets that will not be a manager for very long. Change is certain. Whether we're moving towards one aspect of the curve of change or another aspect, we're either going up or down on the sinusoidal wave of change. It's for you to measure, you know. People who can measure it absolutely accurately make a fortune. Most of us don't even bother to try to measure it. But if you're trying to find out where we're going with a thing, then looking really does help. You won't find out what the trend is, the underlying trend in any situation, unless you look, you study, you take other people's points of view into account, you listen to a few videos from a few different people, and you get a sense of things quite closely when you study. So that's an aspect of management, knowing what is and knowing what's likely to become. So that assessment is what gives rise to a realization. And the realization takes the form of, oh dear, this isn't working. Or, well, this seems to be working, let's give it a little bit more backing, put more resources that way. But typically, changes are required. And those changes need to be made in the form of a decision. Now, a decision is like an incision in that it cuts. A decision cuts away all other possibilities. It is not optioneering. It is not a proposal. A decision is definitive. And to make sure it's defined as definitive, you announce it, you allocate resources to it, and you get people to depend upon it. When you've done that, then your decision is rooted. It's very hard to undo. If circumstances change in future that show you that that decision was wrong, okay, well, you make another decision. But a decision is not something that you undo. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that you would disempower yourself if you thought that your decisions were just proposals. There's something about commitment to a course of action that opens up gates and avenues and attracts resources that would not be otherwise available to you. This is a mystery. This is a mystery of faith. You have to make a decision for everything to align. Because if you don't make a committed movement in a given direction, why on earth do you assume your team would do that, or anybody else? You have to be the one to decide and commit to that decision. And that will magnetize the resources to you. Now, when you have given your decision and you've made a statement about the future, then you have to fulfill that statement. You have to keep your word. And typically, when you make one decision, you're going against a previous one. Now you have to go back and think about what you've committed to do on that previous one. Whatever you've committed to do, you need to do that. It might seem expedient to break your word. And I'm sure it feels like that to people because most people do. But those of us who don't, we recognize each other and we build our world of those people who keep their word. And we mix with the others as well. What's the choice? Because the vast amount of people break their word. but we don't trust them. And you might be somebody outside of the inner circle and not know it because you don't keep your word. When you keep your word, various things happen. First of all, you know that you've kept your word. So every time you give your word, you know you're likely to keep your word. And so your word takes on gravitas. And that is magical. That encourages people to believe you, trust you, follow you. It's a quality of leadership, isn't it? You have to get people to be able to follow you. Keeping your word does that. If you go to a deeper level, the word is almost like sacred bond between the inner and the outer. It's no coincidence that the voice and also the ear, these are related to the fifth plane, the throat chakra, the mystery in Sufism of sacredness. In the beginning was the word. We have to re-engage with the sacredness of the word for us to understand that there was a time before history, it is said, that the word gave rise to instant manifestation. The word was magic. And to some considerable extent it still is. It's just that there's a time delay. Before it was considered that it was an instantaneous thing. Now there's a time delay and noise and confusion that stops you always from manifesting what you say. But when you get further and further and further along in esoteric studies, you have to be very careful. You have to be careful because whatever comes out of your mouth, your word, that's a magical spell. It impacts upon reality and it causes to magnetize towards you the contents of your word. Now I'm thinking of self-cursing, self-deprecation, I am statements. If any of those spells that you announce are dark, then you're doing yourself harm. Be careful. If you develop magical power, then you have to take a lot more responsibility than before. And we're studying leadership, knowing that at the highest level of leadership, there is magic at play. A leader's fundamental job is to turn a bunch of people into group consciousness and be the spokesperson for a higher level of energy. That's magic. And the words that are used in order to apply that group consciousness to an event of manifestation in the world, they're sacred. So keeping your word is training yourself to that higher level of sacredness. We're discussing completing on our word now, and that means we have to get the job done. And there's a whole process involved in getting the job done. You need a jobless system. And everybody thinks that they've got a jobless system. I want to show you mine. I'll bet it's better. I'll get into that in a minute. When you finish the job, then you're free to move on. And the thing about freedom is that it's an energy field. With freedom, you move into a more relaxed way of being. That makes you more inspired. That makes you open to new ideas. It reduces the clenched decision-making process when you're in stress to a decision-making process based on more faith, trust, and relaxed enjoyment. There's all manner of reasons why it would be a good deal more productive to be somewhat free of all of your management responsibilities from time to time. So, relaxing, But anyway, in the job of leadership, you can do two things particularly to keep yourself free from unnecessary involvements. And that is by delegating as soon as possible. As soon as someone else comes into your field of inquiry who is capable of doing some part of what you're doing, it is a good thing to consider delegation. We do not delegate responsibility. We always hold our own position of leadership as the final responsibility. What we do is delegate authority. In other words, we empower another person to make a decision about something. And we trust that they're going to make it right. After a while, perhaps we might supervise them for a while just to help them with their training, but in the end, it's authority that you're delegating to them. And without being able to do that, then you're never going to expand your leadership potential very far. And the second thing is to insulate yourself from distractions. Somebody between you and the public, or even other members of the team, can make sure that that which comes to you needs to come to you. And when it does come to you, it comes in a form which is clear and easy to respond to. Then you can keep your head clear to be open to inspiration. So there's a good deal of advantage in maintaining a level of non-involvement as well as passionate involvement. Now, I said I wanted to go into the job list system. I've developed this system myself. I've been using it at least 20 years, probably longer. And I'm always on top of my work. I always have been. I never find it difficult to do what I'm asked to do on time. In other words, it works. And I've seen everyone else's system. I always say, look, I've got this job list system, and somebody says, well, I've got one, have a look at mine, and it's just nothing compared. Mine is very specific. So let me just explain how it works. First of all, very, very controversial beginning, it is handwritten. I know how unpopular that's going to sound. It's not because I can't learn computers. I'm quite good with computers. But my body is also an aspect of my intelligence. It's necessary for us to use all the resources that we've got to be the most effective managers we can be. And body knowledge is profound and being lost because of dependency upon computers. When you pick up a pen and you write on paper, you're forming a somatic relationship with what's going on. It's no longer just concepts, it's a physicality, it's a beauty of the written word and so on. So I keep a handwritten job list, or at least it might be typed and then updated in a handwritten form. It's certainly a physical document, and I really do recommend this. The thing that can go wrong with, well, I won't talk about what's wrong with computers, but what goes right with the handwritten job list system is that your relationship with it includes different dimensions of your being. For example, you make sure it's always attractive and you enjoy looking at it, so you keep it tidy and good looking, attractive, beautiful if possible. And when you look at it, you're proud of the spaces where you've cleared jobs and the ticks where you've done the jobs, and you get this sense of achievement and triumph when you're on top of things. It's denied you if you don't do this. It acts upon the unconscious aspect of intelligence as well. So if you write down that a job needs to be done, then it goes into your unconscious mind. And when it comes time to do that job, you'll find the solution to it has already been worked out unconsciously. Even to the point where you might put in that so-and-so needs to happen. And by the time you get to do that job, it has happened. Some magical process has occurred. It's mystery, it's a mystical process. Anyway, here's the process. First of all, to start the system, you take one sheet of paper. I mean, I'll probably offer a template for you. So you take one sheet of paper and you include upon that all your domestic jobs and all your business work as well on the same sheet of paper. Non-ordinary ones, typically. If it's routine and you wouldn't forget it, then you don't need to write it down. But everything that you need to remember and that is a risk of forgetting, that goes down on the paper. And at the beginning, for some people, this is going to be lots and lots and lots of sheets of paper. But it changes quite quickly. So you put everything down. And as far as possible, you kind of prioritize the jobs. And this is the secret of the system. First of all, the jobs that really don't have to be done ever. If you don't want them to be done, you don't do them and nobody cares. You might think to yourself, well, I really would like to go to Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. That's a C job, because if you don't, it doesn't matter very much. Now, those C jobs can be just tucked away somewhere quietly and you don't look at them at all until you've got nothing to do. All the rest are A or B. And A and B are simply priority. A1, A2, B1, B2. There's a category B3, so I'll just go through these briefly now. A1 jobs must be done today, or you don't go to sleep. Absolute priority, you're not allowed to go to bed until you've done those jobs. A1. And you put those on a piece of card, this sort of type of card. I'll explain that in a minute. I use an additional piece of card for this task. But I'll write down the A1 jobs on a separate piece of paper for the day. The A2 jobs I'll put on the back of the paper so that I just carry out the A1 jobs, and I must do those. If I've still got time left and appetite for work, I'll turn the card and then I'll do the A2 jobs. And then if I've done those, I've finished my work today. Then the B1s get promoted, B2s get promoted, and so on. So that is quite simple. A1 must be done. A2 I hope to do today. B1, B2, they'll be done whenever I get around to doing it. B3, when I've actually done what I need to do and I've sent off something to someone else, it's a B3 situation where my job is to receive something from someone else telling me that they've done their bit. And that would amount to a follow-up on a certain date. Now, shortcuts can be introduced where you batch together similar jobs. I do all my emails at the same time, or make all my telephone calls at the same time, and so on. Even though they might not be quite so urgent as other jobs, nevertheless I batch them together. And there's also another little trick where I just take any little job and I do it and get it out of the way. So that, if there's a job list with 30 jobs on it and 10 of them are very easy to do within an hour, then I'll just do those easy jobs quickly. So they're just out of my hair. Because I found that the key to staying on top of doing things is not to get anxious. If you're clear-minded, and even meditatively so, then you could just do anything. Things don't take very long to do when you're in a non-anxious state of mind, but anxiety will make you stress up and do things wrongly. And So if you clear lots of little jobs out of the way, and you do all of the batching together, you have to change your state of being less often. And it's stressful to change your state of being. And it's stressful to see jobs left undone. So you just remove the causes of the stress. And if you've got a big job to do and you think, oh God, I can't do that, that's awful, that's too big, then what you do is you just chunk it down. So you take a 12-year task, for example, I'm going to write a book, and you say, okay, job 1, outline, and then you just plan the outline of the book. It's a small job, it's not stressful at all, very easy to do on the first sort of sketchy level. So you can just do that and you've made a start. So if you've got a very big job, turn it into small jobs, lots of little small jobs, and then you just pick off one and another and so on. The key is absolutely reducing the amount of stress you've got. And you do whatever you can do in a day and then tidy up your job list so that you come to a nice, clean, clear day's work tomorrow. And then you take out the A1s for tomorrow, put it on one side of a little batch card, A2s on the back, and you don't look at your job list that day unless you have to add to it. So that reduces all of the stress of wondering, what else should I be doing? You don't have to be doing anything else. You know what you should be doing. At any particular moment, you've got a very clear sense of the priority. I must be doing this right now. I'm not thinking about anything else. There's the secret. And everything's easy.